The wind on the slopes of Kholat Syakhl was the kind that could strip a man down to his bones. In the local Mansi language, the mountain's name meant the Mountain of the Dead. It wasn't a poetic nickname. Stories of hunters vanishing here went back generations. But to 9 young hikers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute in 1959, the mountain was not a warning. It was a challenge. Led by Igor Dyatlov, the group was experienced, disciplined, and hungry for adventure. They signed the expedition log with confidence: Northern Ural, Category 3 difficulty, goal, Gorao Torton. None of them knew that their signatures would soon become evidence in a criminal investigation. They boarded a train, laughing, playing mandolin, teasing one another, documenting every step as if they believed that cameras could protect them. Each photo captured the illusion of safety. Each step carried them deeper into the cold mouth of history, toward a nightmare still unanswered after 65 years. The diary entries and photographs recovered later paint an almost romantic picture. They danced around a campfire, joked about snowmen watching them. One wrote, "I wonder what awaits us on the trail." Another responded playfully, "Probably snow." Their faces were full of life, frozen in time long before their bodies would be. Their last photographs showed a snowstorm beginning. It was the kind of snowfall that quieted the world, too quiet. A haunting image showed Zina Kolmogorova staring into the distance, a look of worry creeping into her eyes. It would later become one of the last images of her alive. What happened next, no one saw. The camera shutters closed. The storm swallowed their laughter. Weeks later, rescuers found their tent, but it wasn't collapsed. It stood as if frozen in motion. The canvas was cut open from the inside. Not unzipped. Slashed. It was as if something terrified the hikers so badly that zippers became too slow. Their boots, jackets, gloves, left behind. Temperatures were -25 degrees Celsius, -13 degrees Fahrenheit. No sane, experienced hiker runs barefoot into a blizzard. But the footprints proved it. 9 people fled the tent in different directions wearing only socks or barefoot. Something, or someone, forced them out. And the snow preserved the footprints as if the mountain wanted the world to know they were running from something. The search team followed the barefoot tracks into the forest. Beneath a cedar tree, they found the first 2 bodies, Doroshenko and Krivonoskenko, lying under the branches, shirtless, barefoot, dead in the snow. Above them, the tree limbs were broken 6 meters high, as if someone had climbed, or struggled, desperately. The branches were ripped apart. Skin and flesh were embedded into the bark. It looked like something out of a horror film: fingernail fragments, blood stains, signs of a frantic climb. Why? Were they trying to escape a predator? Or trying to see something in the darkness? The bodies suggested another terror. Their corpses were partially burnt. They tried to build a fire, but something prevented them from finishing it. Something too close. Too fast. Following the tracks, searchers found more bodies: Dyatlov, Kolmogorova, and Slobodin, lying in a line as if they were crawling back toward the tent. Their poses told a story of desperation. Slobodin's skull had a fracture, but no external damage. His skin showed signs of bruising as if he had been fighting someone in the snow. Dyatlov, the leader, clutched a branch in one frozen hand, as if trying to pull himself forward. Zina had bruises that resembled defensive wounds, suggesting a struggle. The snow preserved everything except the answer to the most important question: what terrified them enough to make them run barefoot into a blizzard? The remaining 4 hikers were not found until months later. Spring forced the snow to melt into the ravine below the cedar tree, exposing something far more disturbing than the earlier bodies. These 4 were better dressed, wearing coats scavenged from the others, proof that some hikers were still alive after the first deaths. But what stunned investigators wasn't their clothing, it was their injuries. Lyudmila Dubinina, one of the strongest members of the group, was missing her tongue. Not cut, not bitten, gone, as if removed with precise force. Her eyes had been removed as well. 2 others had crushed chests, ribs shattered with force comparable to a car crash. Yet, no external bruising. No signs of beating. No blunt object marks. One investigator whispered in horror, It is as if they were crushed from the inside. The final body, Kholat, showed signs of radiation on his clothing. No normal accident could explain this combination: internal trauma, missing organs, and radiation contamination. The ravine became more than a discovery. It became a crime scene. Forensics were baffled. The chest fractures suffered by Zolotaryov and Dyatlov were extremely severe, equivalent to what a person might sustain in a high-speed car crash. But there were no external bruises or soft tissue damage, meaning it wasn't caused by beating or falling. The medical examiner said, "The injuries could not have been inflicted by another human being." Dubinina's missing tongue was even stranger. The wound suggested it had been torn out after she died, because there was no massive bleeding, just a smooth, surgical removal. And the radiation levels on their clothing were abnormal, officially documented in the investigation report. This wasn't a simple case of hypothermia or avalanche. The autopsy contradicted every easy explanation. 9 experienced hikers don't die in 9 different ways without something extraordinary happening. Whatever they saw that night, whatever made them flee barefoot into minus 25 degrees Celsius, it killed them with force and precision. When investigators couldn't explain the injuries, the Soviet government quickly shut down the case. The official conclusion was chillingly vague. A compelling unknown force. Not avalanche. Not hypothermia. Just force. The files were stamped classified, and families were warned not to ask questions. For decades, rumors circulated. Some said the hikers witnessed a secret missile test, and the military eliminated them. Locals claimed to see orange orbs glowing in the sky that same night, UFO reports documented in the case file. Others believed the group accidentally entered KGB territory. The lack of answers turned the incident into a vacuum, and theories rushed to fill it. Radiation, missing organs, crushed bones, cut tent. The world demanded an explanation. The government offered silence. Among the belongings recovered from the ravine was a camera no one knew they had brought. Its final image, frame 33, was a blurred, overexposed shot of a bright glowing orb against the night sky. No stars, moon, or landscape, just a sphere of intense light. Investigators dismissed it as a light leak, but the negative was perfectly intact. The hikers were experienced photographers. They knew how to control exposure even in snowstorms. In the background of their diaries, one chilling entry appeared. "We now know that the snowman exists." At first, everyone assumed it was a joke. But when paired with the unexplained injuries, the missing tongue, and the glowing orb, the joke became a question. Were they documenting something? Were they being watched? That final photograph looks less like an accident, and more like evidence. When the investigation finally closed, the hikers' families were given their belongings, except for certain items. Several pages from the diaries were missing. Parts of the autopsy report were redacted. Photographs disappeared. The military placed a restricted zone around Dyatlov Pass for years. The lead investigator, Lev Ivanov, admitted decades later in an interview, "I received direct orders from Moscow to shut the case." He also revealed something hidden from the public. Soldiers reported seeing strange spheres of fire in the sky near the site during the search effort. Ivanov tried to include these statements in the official report, until he was removed from the case. The Soviet Union didn't just hide the truth. It buried it in snow and silence. Rumors began to swirl about secret military activity. The Ural Mountains were known to host covert weapon tests, parachute mines, experimental rockets, even chemical aerosols. Declassified documents decades later confirmed that parachute mines were being tested in February 1959, in the same region where the hikers died. These mines explode midair with a shockwave powerful enough to crush internal organs without external bruising, the same type of trauma found on Dyatlov and Zolotaryov. The blast wave could have sent shock through their bodies, rupturing ribs and internal tissue, yet leaving their skin untouched. If the hikers saw lights in the sky, military flares or falling mines, they could have mistaken them for UFOs. Panic spreads. They cut the tent, trying to escape. They scatter into the forest. The shock wave hits some of them. But if it was the military, Why hide the bodies? Why seal the files? Why label it unknown force? The deeper investigators dug, the more obvious it became. Either the Soviet military caused it, or something even they couldn't explain did. A different theory emerged in 2013 from Dyatlov, a researcher obsessed with the case. He studied wind patterns around Kholat Syakhl and found that the shape of the mountain could create a rare phenomenon called infrasound, sound waves below human hearing that induce panic, dread, hallucination, and irrational behavior. Infrasound has been tested in military labs and known to trigger fear without any visible cause. The theory suggested that hurricane-force winds might have produced infrasound waves that caused the hikers to panic and flee the tent in confusion. But this theory cracks when compared to autopsy data. Infrasound can cause panic, but it cannot shatter ribs like car crashes or remove a human tongue. Panic could explain barefoot running. It could not explain radiation. Infrasound remains a piece of the puzzle, but not the solution. There were too many variables, too many wounds inconsistent with psychological panic. One detail investigators ignored became a turning point: the footprints. Not animal tracks. Human. Rescuers described them as prints of people walking calmly, walking, not running. But one footprint stood out, a pattern consistent with military-style footwear, different from the hiker's boots. And another print appeared to be worn without footwear, like a bare foot inside footwear too big for the wearer. For years this detail was dismissed. But when the photos and diary pages resurfaced decades later, it aligned too well with witness reports from local Mansi hunters who claimed to see figures on the mountain that night, tall, silent, watching. The Mansi denied attacking the hikers. Investigators cleared them. Yet the feeling persisted. The hikers weren't alone. Whether it was soldiers, unknown personnel, or something less human, someone else was there. Ludmila's missing tongue remains the most disturbing element. The medical examiner noted the edges were smooth, not shredded or torn. The wound suggested it was removed post-mortem, when her body was still warm but no longer bleeding. Some theorists claim animals scavenged it, but animals don't remove tongues cleanly, nor do they select specific organs and leave the rest untouched. And what about the missing eyes? Why those organs? One forensic pathologist proposed something chilling. Tongues are removed when someone is silenced. In spy and military cases, interrogation sometimes ends with organ removal to prevent speaking or identification. Was Ludmila the last witness alive? Was she questioned? Tortured? Silenced? Radiation on clothing. Missing diary pages. Classified files. This wasn't nature. This was human interference, or something that mimics it. 30 years after the case was closed, Lev Ivanov, the original investigator, finally spoke. Retired, older, and beyond the reach of Soviet consequences, he made his confession to a journalist. I was instructed to remove any mention of spherical flying objects from the case file. He admitted soldiers reported orange orbs floating in the sky. He admitted he was told not to look into radiation evidence. He admitted the government forced an avalanche explanation, despite the slope being too shallow for avalanches. When asked what he believed killed the hikers, Ivanov hesitated, then replied, "Something beyond human capability." The silence after that statement was colder than the mountain itself. The truth was never lost. It was buried. In 2019, Russia suddenly reopened the Dyatlov Pass investigation, but with one condition. Only natural causes could be considered. No military experiments. No unknown humans. No classified activity. The investigators traveled to the site, retraced the steps, measured slopes, wind patterns, snow depth. Months later, they held a press conference where cameras clicked like machine guns. The result? Avalanche. That was the new conclusion. It contradicted almost every physical detail. The slope angle wasn't steep enough. There was no displaced snow. The tent was visible from a distance, not buried. Footprints remained visible, meaning no avalanche swept them away. Yet despite all that, the government insisted. Avalanche? Reporters asked. How do you explain the missing tongue, crushed ribs, radiation? Officials ended the conference. No questions. History repeated itself. Silence. In 2021, two Swiss scientists became obsessed with solving the case, not with theories, but with math. Using computer simulations from Disney's Frozen, yes, seriously, they modeled snow movement and slab avalanches. The result? A rare microavalanche could have partially collapsed the tent, pushing the hikers out into the cold. But the simulation still couldn't account for tongue removed, radiation, internal trauma identical to car crash victims, clothing swapped among hikers. So the scientists suggested something else. They may have fled the tent due to another threat, then encountered the avalanche. Meaning, avalanche wasn't the cause. It was the cover. When all theories were layered onto each other, military tests, shockwave trauma, glowing spheres, classified documents, a chilling hybrid theory formed. Parachute mine explosions. Evidence. These mines create a shockwave strong enough to crush organs without bruising. They were tested in that exact region and month. Their explosions produced bright, hovering orange orbs seen by local witnesses. Radiation fits military material. Suddenly, the puzzle pieces aligned. The hikers heard explosions. Thought they were under attack. Cut the tent open from inside. Ran into the dark and cold. Some were injured by the shockwave. Others tried to build a fire. Those who survived longer scavenged clothing from the dead. The last 4 fell into the ravine. Ludmila's tongue and eyes, removed by animals or as a result of prolonged water exposure. No aliens. No Yeti. No supernatural force. Just human testing and human silence. Years later, relatives visited the site. Snow swallowed their footsteps. Wind erased them. The mountain was quiet, as if the land itself refused to speak. Igor Dyatlov's sister once said in an interview, "My brother died fighting for his life. I know that much." Every year, new theories emerge. People want UFOs, government assassins, secret weapons. But beneath every hypothesis lies a simple human truth. 9 young hikers ran barefoot into a killing storm, not because they were inexperienced, but because something scared them more than death by freezing. The Dyatlov Pass doesn't just hold corpses. It holds secrets. Inside a museum in Ekaterinburg, the hikers' cameras sit in a glass case. Their last frames remain frozen in time. Zina laughing in the snow. Rustam adjusting his backpack. A blurry flash in the night sky. That final frame, frame 33, is still argued about. Some say it's a flare. Others say a UFO. Whatever it is, it was the last thing they saw. What killed the hikers? A perfect storm of fear, secrecy, and science. A military test, a shockwave, panic, and brutal Arctic survival. The government hid the truth to hide their mistake. The mountain kept the rest. If you visit Dyatlov Pass today, you'll find a metal monument at the site. The inscription is short, simple, brutal. In memory of those who died here. No cause of death. No explanation. Just the emptiness of wind, and the mountain that still refuses to answer.